All right.
What do you want to do? Color accuracy?
We're going to do color.
Color.
And it's going to start with color decoding, which is it's about color saturation, which is real important. I don't see anything in the room that I think has any color decoding issues this year. I'm very happy to say. Frankly, it's not that big of a problem anymore. A couple of years ago on the VT30, we did have some pretty serious color decoding problems with red push. Company fixed that completely last year with the VT50. Really, the test pattern for it is that I use all the time is on Joe Kane's HD Basics. It's a color decoding pattern, but you have to have the ability to isolate the colors in order to be able to see what's going on. Unfortunately, there's only one TV in the room that can do that, and that's the Samsung, because it's got an RGB only feature where you can isolate those colors. LG has that in their product line. I've been begging Panasonic, and I'll do it again. Please give that to us one day. It's a nice feature, especially for what we're doing here. But let me show it to you on the Samsung.
Is it on both Samsungs or only on the plasma?
It's on what? It's on all Samsungs. Yeah. But the blue only part of this would be the way you would set color if you had to change it with a color bar pattern. Filters don't work. I used to hand out filters. They used to work with some plasmas. They really don't work accurately enough to do it anymore. Plus, I don't have 60 of them. So, so let's take a look at this decoding pattern, and the description of it, you can read it. So with this one, I can go through all of them, and what you're looking to see is no change between these transitions here. If I take it off, you remember, you've got different colors, right? You don't want to see any transitions on red from anything in here, or green, same thing, or blue, basically. But like I said, I can't detect any color decoding problems from anything that we've done in the last 5 days on any of these TVs, so I think they're all fine.
So they all decode Rec 709 perfectly?
Well, they're decoding color correctly, and that means no loss. You don't have to desaturate color. You don't lose any color resolution.
Oh, so that color resolution.
Yeah, Rec 709, I mean, that's obviously color decoding is part of that spec. We're going to be looking now next at primary and secondary color accuracy. And that, of course, is also, we're working with the Rec 709 specification. In the not too distant future, that's probably going to be changing. We're going to be ending up with wider color spaces, DCI, somebody was talking about it earlier. I think it was great. Yeah, there you go, Panasonic, see that? Where we'll get a much wider color space and we'll have more color than we've ever seen in a television system before. When is that going to be a reality? I don't know. Probably it's going to be several years before we see it in the home, at least. It's not even in, I don't believe it's even being produced yet, although post-production facilities that I work with are starting to use P3 or DCI color space. When it's going to be reality with actual video transfer, I don't know.
It's actually in the film, though. It's even broader in film, isn't it?
It varies from its film stock, but I think the gamut of film is, I wouldn't like to say.
It's not DCI.
It's hard to say, but
It's different. It depends on a lot of factors. It's not rigid like a video system is.
Now,
it's flexible based on the different film stocks.
Right.
They all vary from each other.
Right.
Actually,
But to a small degree, they're
Yes,
standard.
but it's very subtle.
Yes.
before I get ahead of myself, we'll take a look at a reverse gray ramp that'll show you 10 different steps. Whoops, went too far. Of gray, so you can take a look at the grayscale tracking from about 10% to 100, actually from 0 to 100 in 10% increments. Because grayscale it obviously is very important to overall color accuracy. Because the way the system works is we have a black and white picture and we lay color over it. If we have color problems with black and white, that ruins your color fidelity. So that's why grayscale calibration is so important.
Does Sony have a really horrible green push to it?
That's not green push, that's different. This is black and white material. What you're seeing there is a gamma error. So, no, green push would be more related to saturation and color decoding. But, yeah, it's got, if you come up close and take a real close look at this on every television, you're gonna see some errors in there, little ones. Nothing's perfect. But yeah, I see what you're talking about clearly.
And here's the difference with the grayscale tracking error. If you see color tints there, if you were to turn the color control all the way down to 0, you would still see the tints.
Exactly.
Because it's in how the TV is reproducing gray shades only. It can't do it completely natural. Whereas with the color decoding error, you can, you can attempt to kind of
You can just back it
throw mud
down.
over it by pulling the saturation control down.
And I just want to mention, you guys gotta stand closer to the mic.
Oh,
Raise your
okay.
voice.
Okay.
Excuse me, I don't want to block.
Repeat what we said.
We gotta put that mic somewhere else, because I'm blocking a TV in the process.
Yeah.
Anybody have any questions about this so far at all?
What we're actually looking at is the colors that we see on this Panasonic here. Right here, we have a red one and then a green one. This is more because of the ABL and how the ABL is not aligned with grayscale tracking across the APL range. So this is something that we are seeing a lot of on the newer plasmas with their circuitry. Case in point would be Samsung, where it's predominantly in this section right here, which is above the mid-range, but still, this should not be happening. On this
Look at our
curve,
reference here.
would you look at that? It's completely neutral across the board. But you can see it's clean here. It's also clean to the, mostly on the Samsung LCD over here across the range. Panasonic goes green on this actual display, probably because of the dynamic backlighting that it has on it. This is something that we noticed in these patterns. On the Sony here, it's
The thing is,
green,
it's
but
also such a huge, big panel that
Right.
you're not going to be in axis the whole time.
Right.
So if I sit here, the shadows look quite good, but if I go like this,
Yes,
the shadows
exactly.
turn blue.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is another reason why plasma is good for big screens.
Yep. So
Yeah, we've been working on an IC standard to a measurement method of this very thing. Okay? And so it isn't out yet, but it'll be out maybe in the next year or so. And then maybe somebody will write some software things.
yes.
Good deal.
Let's hope so. One thing that, Dwayne, we were both talking about this, wouldn't it be great if a plasma manufacturer added grayscale offsets for different DLs? So we
Yeah.
can, it would mean calibration would take a lot longer, but.
Right, but that's for us, but then again,
Yeah.
the engineers should be doing this.
The engineers should do this themselves, right?
One manufacturer was doing it anyway, way back in the day, so I mean, this is math, basically. It's math, that's all it is. It's hard math, it's complicated math, but it's still math.
They have the Curo engineers there anyway.
Well, it's not that, I mean, from an engineering perspective, it's pretty much, if you can create this display, you can create what we're looking for, basically. You
Yeah,
know?
this is a bit of a nitpick, but
Yeah.
hey, we're at the point where that's all we can do.
Right.
Displays are so good now, we have to nitpick. 'Cause
Well, outside of these test patterns, have you noticed any anomalies on the color decoding in real material?
there's no,
Well, yeah.
is it color decoding?
Color decoding, no. What we have noticed, for instance, on the Samsung is with certain content, we can see these gamma bands right here in skin tones.
Right.
And it'll look like green or red.
It will look kind of almost
patches.
overexposed
Yeah.
curves in the
Curves.
image. Right.
It was very, for instance, on the Panasonic, it was very prevailing on the 2011 model.
The VT30?
The VT30, very. But I would say for the Panasonics, I have not seen it this year on the 60 series, or I haven't also seen it on the 50 series also, so
There you go.
they fixed that.
All right. So the next thing we'll do is we'll put up 75% full field color fields. Red, green, blue, cyan, magenta, and yellow, primary and secondary colors in our system. So you can look and see if there's any differences. Again, if I'm not mistaken, I think they're all really close to Rec 709, so they should look very close to the same on everything in the room. Red? Again, on LCD, be careful. What you see straight on is not what you can see off from an angle, horizontally or even vertically. Let's do green.
I'm good with Jim.
Blue. Do the secondaries real quick. This is cyan.
The difference that you're seeing right here between the Samsung and the Panasonic, for instance, that's not the color of red, that's the brightness of red. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, let me go back to that. That's a really good point.
This,
Not only that, you also see this in program material, and you will see it. You're going to see slightly rosier skin tones, but it's because this thing is significantly brighter than what's flanking it. This is 35-foot Lambert peak light output, that's 30, this is 40. And that's, a lot of people were asking questions about this last night. That's the reason.
yeah.
What about the red phosphor on the Panasonics? Was that an issue at all?
We didn't even use it because it has nothing to do with 709.
It's
So-
actually, that is a really cool feature.
Yeah, if we were to turn it on, yeah, this would be much redder than this.
That has an application even now, but it's not video, it's photography.
Okay.
So if you put an SD card in there with some of your photos, for example, you might want to go to that color space because photography has you just have a much wider color gamut, right? That's a cool, it's a cool thing actually. And then if we ever do get DCI color space in the home.
Which I think we'll see in 4K.
On the Sony 4K server, have they told us what gamut
That's
is
the
mastered
question.
for?
No.
I'm sorry.
Have Sony told us what gamut?
What your 4K was mastered to?
Could be DCI, could be Rec 2020.
Just curious.
Probably DCI.
I think it
Probably
is
DCI.
DCI.
Green.
So there it is. But it can't accept the 4K signal.
Right.
David. Would that be native on this thing?
The color gamut.
Native
Yeah,
is the
native.
white gamut.
Yes.
So that would be the red.
Well,
That's
that
the red
begs the
phosphorus.
question, does the Sony should have a DCI color space option in it?
Hey, Kevin, can you go back to the red?
It's called native.
Can you go back to the red?
Yeah, absolutely.
You'll be able
It's
to see it.
native on the Panasonic. Question is, do we have it in the Sony? Where we can actually look
Probably
at it?
not, because the LEDs are probably going to limit the gamut.
One of the questions I asked.
Oh, yeah.
One of the questions I asked at
Wow,
the
yeah.
press conference, I wanted to tell you about. Kind of interesting. So I
What do
went
we
to
got
a
here?
press
Were you in
conference.
Yeah. This is the.
A Panasonic
the
press
red.
conference
Really?
about 3 weeks ago or so. It was at Ed Gadget's rented place in New York City.
It's not just one
Bet Rob
unit,
was there, I'll
that's-
bet. And one of the questions I asked was, you added some extra gases to make the red phosphorus
Yeah.
It's
glow
not
a little
straight
bit
out.
more and be stronger. But DCI is all about a larger color gamut in all the
This
colors.
is the.
And I
this
think
is predominantly
Bill Schindler was able to answer that all they have to do is adjust the red, and they got the rest of the color gamut, 98% of it.
They've got 98%, so obviously the red is the one that they.
Right, that needed to be pushed up.
Hey, wait,
That's
why
great.
did you know you guys do the same luminance together?
We did. We all aimed for 40.
Oh, okay.
Now, if a panel couldn't reach it, that wasn't our problem.
Okay. Last year you did what, 35 or something?
No, last year we did we do
did
35?
We- No,
35 last
we did 35 because nothing could do 40, as I recall.
So now you aim for 44?
I mean, nothing but the LCDs, of course, which can all handle it in 40, but.
Yeah. So
I
even
think
if
we
did-
kind of, we sort of gave the plasma category a little break last year, but,
Yeah.
you know.
I actually like 45-foot limits, I'm sorry. Even
In a
if I-
dark room?
Yeah, but I wasn't able to overrule them, so we got 40.
So even if we would have done 35, the ZT would not even gotten to that either. Yeah.
What
Because
did they get up to?
30,
the ISF modes, 30.
But the
Yeah.
VT got 35?
yes.
Yeah.
It's the filter,
Less aggressive filter.
less aggressive
What
filter.
about the other modes?
Oh, wow.
That's a good question. We didn't
The
go
other
through all
modes, they will be brighter. However, they do not come out as well as the ISF modes. We tried custom mode, which is very similar to the ISF modes, and also it has 10-point gamut and everything. And
10-point
it still
white
came out
balance.
to 30.
What did the Samsung get again?
40.
The brief was make
It got 40 because it was set at 40.
Yeah,
Go up to-
It can
go
go
up to
brighter,
60.
but we set it at 40.
You can always put a black filter, black filters help displays because
Right.
it improves contrast. So
Yes.
even though the luminance goes down,
The
the
contrast
display
goes up.
quality and ambient light
Right.
goes up.
Right.
There's an interesting point. The curl we have here has had a bit of an accident, right? there's a nick in the front of the screen and it scratched part of the filter off. And you can see in that little scratch where there's no filter anymore how bright it is behind it. Just how much light.
I just have a question on the Panasonics. You were talking about the ISF day and night and the custom mode. Isn't there also professional?
They're
modes as
labeled,
well?
they're, yeah.
Yes.
They're professional, then you calibrate them, punch in a secret code or use control cal, then that mode becomes ISF day or
Oh, that one, no,
Yes.
that's
And one of the cool features that I guess Panasonic forgot about in their firmware is when you do calibrate and activate and calibrate the ISO modes, you get a European mode that's called EBU.
In Europe, we have the EBU. So EBU is like the European equivalent of SMPTE. And when we first came here, this mode wasn't here. But then we unlocked this code, and look, here it is. So we're living in a small world now.
One last thing about color that we added last year. We did add color tracking measurements last year, and we posted them. And we had every intention to do that this year. Unfortunately, we had a little snafu with the software. Dwayne is working on getting that to work, but it's not. We're not going to be able to show it tonight, unfortunately. We'll get this done tomorrow, and we will probably be showing it tomorrow if we succeed, obviously.
Right.
But then it will also get published up on Value Electronics' website. And what it's about is how well does the display track all 6 of the colors that you just looked at from 0 to 100%. And what we have is we have the ability to show 4 different levels, 25, 50, 75, and 100% on all these colors. And it's actually pretty important, as if anybody's seen a couple of years ago when we had the Elite, which actually won the event, we discovered a color tracking issue with one color, and it was really only because we had all these displays next to each other that we even noticed it and then bothered to measure it. And it was with cyan, which was headed way towards blue at certain luminance levels. I later measured other colors to find color tracking problems were not just with cyan, but with most of the colors. It's important because, of course, you want those colors to be the same at different luminance levels. But
Right, because of the fact that with regular content, color is not always at 100% luminance level. Most of the time it's somewhere in between 0 and 75, the majority of the time. So you want that color's tracking to be straight as a line from really 0 to 100. And I can tell you without the graphs and everything is the Panasonics and the Samsung were tracking perfectly. I'm not sure about the Panasonic over here.
Very good.
Very good?
Very good. Much
This
better than
one,
last year.
what about this one? 'Cause I didn't.
Sony.
So
Kevin?
I know, pretty good, not perfect.
Pretty
And I
good.
actually have a picture of that somewhere
Yeah.
in there. I do.
Yeah.
Pretty good, not perfect, not as good as not as good as these 3.
No.
Yeah,
But
these
good,
three would be
still good.
The best right here, of course. So, it's very important, but unfortunately, due to something like Kevin said, some snafus with the software, which anyone using our software would know.
Yep.
It's not perfect right now. So we got some ideas on getting that information to you guys tomorrow.
Speaking of software, actually, we're a little remiss in not mentioning the companies that we are working with. And
Absolutely.
their products are very important to what we do. And of course, one of them is SpectraCal's CalMan Pro, which is what we use to generate the patterns, to calibrate the panels, and generate reports. And the other one with Panasonic for the ISF implementation is Control Cal, which is a really awesome little software package
Yes.
that allows us to implement those modes.
Yes, it's very, very good control, Cal, and one of the great benefits of it, because there is a bug in these Panasonics, when activating and trying to copy over the settings, they added a feature where you can copy settings to all of the inputs. Well, with the ISF modes, if you try to copy over ISF night to the other inputs, it doesn't do night mode, it copies over day mode into night mode.
It copies the mode, but it doesn't it messes the gamma up.
No,
It takes-
I
oh,
checked.
really? It's even
Yes,
worse
I-
than-
Yeah, it is even worse. So we reported the bug to them, of course, but with Control Cal, you can do the copying straight from the actual suite itself, and then on top of it, you can actually calibrate the display without the GUI up front on the screen, because with the GUI, calibrators and reviewers out there, when calibrating these Panasonics, you will get different measurements if you measure with the GUI up compared with the GUI offline.
Depending upon the color of the
Yes.
GUI, it's gonna do it,
Yes.
yep.
Dwight,
So-
did you also find an issue with the stability and it being able to hold the calibration?
Yes.
Should we repeat that question? Did everybody
Yes,
hear that?
the question was, are there any bugaboos, basically, with calibrating the Panasonics and the Samsungs, or?
No, the Panasonics is what I have read.
Okay, well, with the Panasonics, they are more difficult compared to last year models to calibrate. Not to say that you cannot calibrate it perfectly, because I did both of them, and when you do see the charts, you will see that the errors on the grayscale with delta E UV are basically, I think,
Below 1%.
it's
from
below
20 up.
1%. I think the highest
Invisible.
was 0.0, well, no, excuse me, 0.8 or something like that, and that was at 10% stimuli.
That's-
Everything else is about 2 and below, 0.2 and below. With the colors, the actual, for Delta E 2000, everything is basically flatline at 0. So you can get this calibrated perfectly, but it's going to take a lot more time to do it, because yes, when you do a grayscale run or even a color run, you can get them perfect on that color run, but if you wait even 2 seconds and go back and rerun it, you're going to get different results. The results are not going to be, significantly different, but it should not do that.
So what do you have to do, run through it 2 or 3 times before you're settled on getting it as good
5 or
as you can?
6.
5 or 6?
Yes.
Okay, that's a lot.
And it actually reminds me of
The VT30.
the VT30 series, well, the 2011 Panasonic, specifically the VT30 series, being that it had the 10-point controls in it. It's that complicated, but
then,
again,
would you be confident, once you've got a spot-on calibration, that 3 months hence, it's gonna maintain that calibration?
that depends on when you get it calibrated.
So the question was about longevity.
Yeah, the question was about longevity of the actual calibration.
I think the
What-
current thinking is now, we're gonna triple the break-in time to 300 hours from last year's
Minimum
right
before
now.
you get your
So
calibration.
that's the key.
I am running back home tests to see how this stuff shifts over time. I'm probably gonna stop it somewhere around the 1,500, 2,000 hour mark. But I can tell you, in between 100 and 250, I had to do another complete recal of the sample I have. Complete recal, because it shifted red.
And you're not seeing that issue with the Samsung?
I don't have a sample at home to actually evaluate this long
I've
term.
calibrated several of them multiple times. There's a little bit of drift, and 200 hours or more of break-in time is what I would recommend.
Yes.
But any phosphor-based plasma display is going to drift over time.
Yes,
somewhat.
absolutely.
And when you get to 1,000 and 2,000 hours, which
You should be
sometimes
recalibrating anyway. That's
Yeah,
what I
right.
recommend to
Oh,
customers
absolutely.
anyway.
they go
Absolutely.
red, and you have
Yeah.
So this is good news for calibrators.
Yes
Well,
and
but
no.
it's not new
Yes and
news.
no,
This has been
because-
going on for a long time. David has been measuring plasmas for, what, 1,500 to 2,000 hour period?
4,500 on a VT25.
There you go.
And
Yeah.
you have to, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not normal use either, because you hit 4,500 hours, you're running 16 hours a day for
Right.
5,
Right.
6, 7
Yeah.
days a week, which is not how people.
That's
use
not
it.
normal, yeah.
So I don't know if that's representative or what, but at the end of the day, they do change over time. pretty
Yes,
significantly.
absolutely.
The other thing is, my bosses are never gonna buy 300 hours, so just.
You mean,
For your purposes, you're okay. But
Joe, edit that part of the tape.
But for the regular end consumer who's actually purchasing these displays, I do not recommend you contact any calibrator or you calibrate it yourself. Well, if you have your own equipment, you can do it whenever. You can do it out of the box. But I recommend that you wait to call your calibrator to calibrate your display until after you had at least 300
Don't
hours.
schedule it till you know you're going to have
Right.
300 hours. All
Until
right.
you know you have 300 hours on the
You
panel
should still
itself.
call your calibrator.
Right.
And say hi.
Yeah, right. Call your calibrator, but I should say, schedule your calibration after you've achieved at least 300 hours of use. The more, the better, basically. But from what I've seen, 300 is the bare minimum.
All right, we got one more major category.
One question.
Yeah, just one question.
Yeah.
So most people who buy televisions don't keep track of how many hours they go.
Right.
So for
Right.
the average consumer out there, or even someone who's.
Well, if you think about it, Rick, you can tell me approximately how many hours a day you watch, just on average. What do you think that would be? 2?
2 to 6.
All right, so let's say 3. Let's be conservative. 3 times 7 is 21 a week. So 10 weeks later, you're at 210, whatever. You know, just take a good educated guess at it in terms of, you know, scheduling. I think it would be
exact.
You don't have to be exact, but you
And
can get a
if I-
pretty.
If I can add to that, we tell our clients when they buy plasma televisions to run them 24/7.
Yeah.
We give them the break-in slide disc, or we'll tell them to run the anti-retention screen, and we say, get past that break-in period. Because it's not only about calibration, it's also about stabilizing the panel to protect it against image retention as well.
There you go.
Yes and no.
Okay.
Running in the plasmas do not stop image retention
It
at all.
helps prevent it.
No, it doesn't. No, it does not.
It's nice to believe
I
it
can tell you
does.
that.
No, it does not.
All right, I know Ken Ross agrees with this.
No, it does not. I
It
mean,
doesn't help.
it doesn't help. It doesn't. It's not a negative impact. And do not be afraid to run your panel 24/7. Every
Good
single
for it.
display that I have, I run it 24/7. The benefit of it is, if there's going to be a defect in your display, it's going to crop up during this run-in instead of it happening
Find
a
out
year down the
sooner
line.
than later.
It's going to happen within a week.
You must have a
Yeah.
hell of an electric bill, Dwayne.
No, no. We have cheap
I have one-
electricity.
That's why he doesn't live in New York. I get it.
Since we can't see this with the test that you're running, can you speak to image retention of the top panels? Which one's more resistant? Have you seen?
Panasonic
Panasonic?
this year.
It looks
Samsung has
that
a
way.
bit more, but it's not much.
Is it more prone
It's neck.
to it or more resistant to it?
More
Oh.
resistant to it.
Yeah, right,
More
right.
resistant to image
Yes.
retention?
It looks that way. I think it's a little early to make a definitive thing
Right,
on that, but
right.
it looks to be that way.
Last year, I mean, I reviewed some Samsung displays, and some of them were astonishingly resistant to image retention. I was actually trying to get things stuck in them, and they just wouldn't.
Right.
But I don't know. I mean, maybe the fact that the black levels are getting deeper and deeper means that we
You
have
can
more of
see
a possibility to see image
Phosphorescence, basically.
Right,
The
right,
leftover charge, you can see it more.
Yeah.
But that's
So-
very temporary.
It's very temporary.
It's not burning.
It goes away in seconds. If you switch it, if you're watching TV, you switch the channel, it should go away in
Right.
seconds. Yeah.
Right.
So you're not seeing more of it on the 8500 this year than prior Samsungs? You're just speaking relative to the Panasonic?
Well, it depends on the Samsungs. The last year, there were some like 60-inch Samsung displays. Like I said, they were really, really resistant. And the 51-inch version was maybe not so much. I mean, none of them have any really bad image retention issues. Like
Yeah, and
some plasmas
I've
are
already
great.
calibrated a couple of the Samsung 8500s from the 51 all the way up to the 64. I haven't seen anything that's truly more significant than it was last year.
Right.
But I will say that the Panasonics are less image retention prone than they were last year, but again,
Yeah.
they would normally go away in a few seconds.
Could that also be due to the fact that it seems they throttled brightness back a little bit?
Well, the brightness thing on this has nothing really to do with the image retention. This is more with these filters. Yeah.
And real quickly, there's a question on from cyberspace that's coming up a lot. And they're asking us if the different size panels perform differently, particularly in luminance and black level.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
they do? Okay.
With Panasonic, the difference is mainly in the peak light output.
Right.
I mean, there's so many variables. Like the high-end models here with the filters eat up a decent amount of the light output. Like the ones that the cheaper displays that don't
Right.
stand up as well to ambient light are actually brighter perversely.
Yes. Now, size-wise, between, like, say, for instance, on the ZT, the 60 and the 65, there's no difference in
Right.
light output.
Right.
For the VT, the 55 to the 65, there's no difference in light output.
Okay.
Panasonic.
We need to move on.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. I would just really quickly say on the Samsung side, having looked at the 51, the 60, and the 64, the main difference that I'm noticing and seeing is light output again. you'll get a brighter day mode on a 51 inch
Right.
because of the smaller screen size.
Right.
That's really other than that, they perform pretty much identically. So I hope that answers cyberspace.
The black level is quite similar.
Black level is very similar.
Very similar.
Let's move on to static resolution, motion resolution,